Hi, thanks for listening to the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I have a new guest who is a cult survivor, and I'm so interested in hearing her story. So, welcome to the podcast, Brooke.
So much, Zach, for having me on. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
So, tell me about your life growing up, because I think that's you were in a cult as when you were small, all the way through adulthood. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah, I was born into it. It's a generational thing. My parents were in it, and their parents were in it, and so on. So it was very generational. So I was raised in this cult. It's Jehovah's Witnesses for anybody that's curious. And I stayed in that until I was 35 years old. So that was quite a big chunk of my life where I really existed within this. And I had no idea that there was life really outside this.
And so what so tell me about, like, when you like, did your parents force you to go to is it a church, or do they call it something else?
They actually call it something else. They call it a kingdom hall. So
Kingdom Hall, yes.
yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses they really hype themselves up to be kind of like different than all of the other religions. So it's why they call everything else a different name than what other religions call it. And so, yes, did my parents force me? Yes, that it wasn't so much force as it was, we know this is what we're doing. This is mandatory to be a part of this family is you're going to serve this God and you're going to listen and obey to the rules. And it was a very like authoritarian type of space, right? It was authoritarian in the religion and it was authoritarian at home. My father was very much, controlling and had that approach of that authoritarian where it was like, you do as I say, or, it's my way or the highway type of
Mhm.
experience.
And did you have brothers and sisters? Yes.
I did. I had a younger brother. He's actually 11 years younger than me. So we really grew up very much apart because by the time he was born, I was already a teenager almost. And so we had very short period of time together. So he had a very different experience of being in the cult than I did.
And is he still part of it, or did he actually get out of it as well?
So he left actually sooner than I did, not because he found out that it was not true or that it was false. It didn't resonate for him and he wanted to live a life more of freedom. And so he just kind of went and did his own thing and didn't really even know what that was, but yeah, it didn't align for him. And he figured that out early on.
So whenever I think of a Jehovah Witness, I think about Jehovah Witnesses that go kind of door to door, or I see them standing outside. When I lived in New York City, I would see them like on in front of a park or in front of a store, and they're giving out pamphlets trying to get new members or and stuff. So is that kind of what you were doing as well as part of the religion?
Oh yeah, for sure. You're spot on with that. I mean, I think that's kind of their classic thing is that they went door to door, right? And they tried to basically recruit you. I like to call it the MLM of the religions because it's like, you literally are trying to just bring people in and you're doing all of this community service for free and you're recruiting new people for this religion so that they can make more money, right? But that's what I did. I did that for, my whole entire, youth. And I was like, I always was one of the kids that I hated doing it. And I was very much, but you pretend like you like doing it. But majority of people do not like doing it. It's uncomfortable going to strangers'
Yeah.
houses and trying to make them, change their mind.
And is there a certain target person that you were always trying to recruit into the religion?
Not necessarily. It was literally anybody that would listen to us, to be
Okay.
honest, because most people slam the door in our faces. So I will say this, I got really good at rejection.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that whenever I mean, a Jehovah Witness has come to my door many times, and I mean, I think one time I got caught up and maybe spent 3 minutes, and I just like said, "I listen, this isn't for me," and I just kind of closed the door, you know. And so that must have happened to you, what, 95% of the time?
Oh, wholeheartedly, 95% of the time I was getting a no, I was getting, doors slammed in their faces. There was a lot of angry people, which I understand now, like looking back and reflecting and understanding if someone recognized that, this person's coming in here to try to tell you what to believe and our religion's the best religion, like we're it. This is the only way you're going to get saved. I can now understand why people were angry a lot of the time because we were trying to force something that really was we shouldn't be forcing.
So what's it different from the Jehovah Witness religion compared to like, a Catholic or just a regular Christian religion? What tell me what the difference and what I do know is that like birthdays are not celebrated, right? And you're just and then are there like no holidays really that are celebrated either?
Zero holidays. We're not allowed. We're all of the holidays are represented as being pagan, and that is another indicator of us being a true religion, is that we do not succumb to everything else that everybody else is celebrating. So they're different in the fact that, a lot of Christian religions don't necessarily shun, right? If their child leaves or whatnot, it doesn't mean that they all of a sudden say, I can't be around this child anymore. They're evil. But Jehovah's Witnesses, it's the opposite, right? If you leave the religion and you have a different belief system than them, they shun you, they abandon you. So when you do choose to leave, like you already know going into it that like you're going to have some severe loss. Like
Mhm.
for myself, when I chose to leave, I lost my family that was still in the religion, right? And then I lost the whole entire community that I had really based my life on. So my best friends, people that I have been friends with since I was a child, I lost these friends. So, you don't realize like how conditional the love is in this community. And it really is because it's like the minute you say, I don't think I believe this way, you're
Mhm.
out. You're gone. You no longer belong.
And what type of abuse did you kind of receive though from your family or from people from the religion itself? Like were you abused at all?
So, yes, that would have been by my father. My father was more of the controlling kind of narcissistic presence. So he was more of the person that had a lot of anger, right? And if I didn't comply or listen to him, that's when saw the anger. And so the minute that I kind of started to have a voice,
Mhm.
and kind
And
of
how
speak
old
up,
were you when you had the voice for the first time?
my voice really came out when I was 15 years old, and I was
Mhm.
just tired of being. The religion is super strict, and my family was very strict because my dad wanted to present that we were a perfect family, like in a perfect in this religion, that we were a perfect family, period. And so the minute that I, didn't comply to those standards and I tried to like just have my own expression or be just a normal teenager, that wasn't okay for him. So that's when kind of the anger came out. And I started to have this voice because I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to be my own person. And I just
Yeah.
couldn't do that in this religion. I couldn't do this in this family. And so we were butting heads a lot.
And what type of abuse did you experience with him? Just was it, you know, and was it just your father or was your mother also abusive?
So my mother wasn't abusive. My mother was more of emotionally put off, disconnected from the world. I think that's kind of how she survived, which often happens in those type of submissive relationships. My father, on the other hand, was, at times could be physical. He was verbal. It was always like a psychological type of abuse, right? And also really demeaning, and belittling and constantly trying to take away my autonomy.
Mm.
And so I think that was the struggle with those pieces. And it was very much the same in the religion. So I always tell people like when you're in these type of cult like systems that want to kind of control and manipulate you,
Mhm.
it is literally like being in an abusive relationship because that's what's happening. So the abuse that's going on in these type of cult like systems are basically trying to control what you wear, what you think, what you eat, what you feel, what you read, right? Like what you watch. They're trying to control because this is the way they keep you in, right? If they have control over you, great, then you're not going to leave. They use that by doing it with fear. The same as an abusive relationship. What does abuser do? They use fear to make you afraid to leave them. So it's the same in this cult like system. They use the fear to keep you trapped because we were told from a very young age if we didn't serve God and we didn't get his approval, that when Armageddon came and God came to destroy the wicked people, that we would die as well. We would not make it into paradise. We would never see our family again. We would just cease to exist, basically. So this fear was inside of me since I was a very, very, very little girl.
Okay.
And it's wild. Yeah, I'll let you I'm sure you have like lots
No,
of
no,
questions.
I think this is exactly what I'm looking for, yeah. I mean, is this um, and did your brother feel this way? Did he feel the fear as well?
Oh yeah, he definitely felt the fear. We all did because when you're really brainwashed from a young age as well, I mean, you ultimately believe it. If your parents believe it, you feel like, oh, this must be true. This must be reality and what exists. And so you don't really question it, and they don't want you to question it. They don't want you to learn how to critically think. They don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to just be a follower. And that's exactly what I was doing.
And, like, did you go to a normal school, though? And did you have friends that were not in the Jehovah Witness?
So I did go to a normal school. I was allowed to like be acquaintances with people at school, but I was not allowed to be friends with them. So I would get invites to friends' houses or all of these things, but I wasn't allowed to go because we called them worldly. So, quote unquote, they were worldly. They were not part of Jehovah's Witnesses. So thus they were bad association. We couldn't hang out with them. That meant they were the part of the people that were going to get destroyed. In
I see. And
essence.
so, whenever you said your father was physically abusive, did that last your entire childhood?
No, thankfully not. It was just when he was angry and couldn't control his anger, that was when I would see that side of him. It was kind of
Okay.
like Jekyll and Hyde. Like he was this actually really big teddy bear and, charming, sweet man. And then he would turn into the other version of him, which was angry, uncontrollable rage. And, you had to fear him.
Wow. And what was your mother when your father was abusive to you? What was she doing? Was she just because he was the main she was subservient to him, was she just basically let him do whatever he needs to do?
Basically, yeah. My mom would always try to stand up to him, but, again, there was that piece where she was always put in her place. Often I would witness that many, many times as
Mhm.
as a young girl. And I always thought and we're really taught in the religion as well that men are better, right? They're higher than us. We're supposed to be subservient to them. We look up to them. And we're just their like helper. We're nothing more.
Yeah.
We're not their equal.
And if you
And
wanted and just being married, if you wanted to marry someone, would they only allow you to marry somebody that is in your religion?
that's correct. Yeah. So if you went outside of that, it wasn't approved. It was there was a lot of a lot of disappointments. Often, sometimes there would be what we call disfellowshipping, which means that we actually basically it's a slap on the wrist to somebody, but it's shunning that person and saying basically this person has done wrong. This person is no longer, abiding by Jehovah's rules or the witnesses' rules, and we have to punish them. And so it was really like a punishment. That happened to myself when I was 16 years old because I decided to have sex before marriage. So I got
And they found
disfellowshipped.
out.
Yes, they found out, and I had to come and confess in front of three elders or three men. And, they wanted all the details, all of the details. And, it was for a 16-year-old girl that's just kind of blossoming into her self and, losing her virginity and all of these other components. It was really terrifying. And I still there was so much trauma there. I had to have so much therapy for that, even that one instance of having to answer these questions, these detailed questions, having to let them know exactly what happened.
And were they asking you this because they were getting off on it?
I'm not certain. I have no idea. I think they use this to say that they're going to pray to God and see if I am repentant and if I can be forgiven. I wasn't. Supposedly I wasn't repentant. They prayed to God. God said I wasn't. And so I got disfellowshipped for a whole entire year. I was shunned and nobody could talk to me. I couldn't talk to my friends. I could go to the church, the so-called church, and walk in there and sit and listen to the talk of the
Mhm.
day, but no one could talk to me. I was basically outcast for that year until they allowed me to come back, if that makes sense.
And what about, like, kids at 16, 17, or experimenting with drinking or going to dances and going to parties, is any of that allowed at all?
No, that would be grounds again for punishment, some type of punishment, disfellowshipping, something, whatever they end up doing. But yeah, there is no room for error. There's only room for the perfect good behavior that is exactly what is needed to be, a follower of God.
And then so what if and what's their stance on abortion? Like, what if you would have gotten pregnant at 15 or 16? Was that they would have made you have the baby if you were
There is no abortion. Abortion is not okay. So that's another piece of taking away the autonomy, right? Allowing somebody to use their body. It's the same thing with, restricting how you have sex or when you have sex. It's taking away your own autonomy to have rights over your own body.
okay. And so the religion would like to have you wait until you are married until you have sex. Is that
That's
traditional?
correct. Yeah. Mhm.
And then so tell me about like your friends that you had at school. Like what was their reaction whenever they had at sleepovers and they're like, come and sleep over or let's go, I don't know, do whatever kids do on the weekends. Like you're like, you just like, I can't, I'm not allowed to, or they just gave up and stopped asking you after a while.
I did. I had to keep, denying them, and eventually they kind of just got it. I eventually just said, I'm not allowed to hang out with anybody, but the people are my religion. And a lot of kids didn't really understand, but I kind of grew up as the outcast and the person that didn't belong because when you don't celebrate holidays as a young person too, like when all the people are like doing Christmas activities or Halloween activities, I had to go sit in the library, so I had to be the oddball.
Oh, you
And
weren't even allowed to participate at school when everybody else was doing it?
no, I was not allowed to participate. I wasn't allowed to participate in even doing saluting the flag because we kept separate from government. So I wasn't allowed to do any of those things that the other kids did. So I always felt like the odd one.
And how do you think this compares to other religions, like the Mormon religion, which I think is a little bit cultish myself?
Oh,
And how do you think this compares to these other kind of cultish religions? I mean, I actually think most religions feel like a cult to me, to be honest, at this point. So.
I know. I would probably agree with that as well. I've actually talked to a lot of Mormons, coming out from the other side of this. I was curious. I was really curious in how other people believed and what that looks like. A lot of Mormons that left the Mormon religion are like, oh, hands down, it's a cult. It's very similar, right? It's like having these certain controlling aspects or ways to like basically kind of grip control and make people think a certain type of way is a cult, right?
Mhm.
It's not letting people actually, you're listening to one person or a set of men that has said, oh, I'm the only person that has a direct connection to God. And so you have to listen to what I say, which if we thought about that big picture, we would say that sounds crazy, but when you're bored into it, you think, "Oh, I guess that makes sense. I guess only he can talk to those 5 dudes or whatever."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so what about today? Do you have any association with any religion today after experiencing this?
So I do not. I have done a lot of deep dives on religion. And, I think what I resonate with most is kind of seeing that every religion has tiny little aspects of truth in them, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, of good, if you will. And I feel like there's just like this kind of weaving of belief systems where it's like I can look at somebody and say, what, I'm not going to judge what they believe. That's their belief system if that's what they want.
Yeah,
What I do judge is when it hurts people, when it separates people,
yeah.
because that to me is not love and that is not anything to do with what if you believe in a higher power or a god would be like. And so I think that's the piece of it. But I don't really necessarily say I believe in any one religion.
And how did you end up you said when you were 35, you ended up, like, leaving the religion. How did you like, what finally at 35 made you say, "I'm out," and how did you do it?
Actually, at the time, it was my husband, my then
And
husband,
he was
that
Jehovah Witness?
he was Jehovah's Witness. He was raised in it as well. And he actually found a bunch of videos on and articles on the child abuse sex cases that were being tried, not only in Australia, but other parts of the country. And it was, parts of the main people are called the governing body of over this religion. And they were lying on the stand. And I didn't necessarily believe him at first, but the more I started to watch these things and listen to all of these people's stories, I started to kind of question everything because I was like, well, if this is a religion that's supposed to be the true religion and God's chosen people, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. And so
Yeah.
that kind of gave me this really deep dive to go and find the backstory. And man, did I go down a rabbit hole and realize so much, of the lies that I had been told since I was young. And that's
And
really
is
what
there a
hit me.
lot of sexual abuse that happens in this religion?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There is a lot. What happened is it was covered up. Of course, they wouldn't want this in the media. They don't want this to be shown because they're supposed to be the true religion. Like, why would the true religion have child sex abuse cases, right?
Yeah.
Coming on? Because a lot of it was the elders that were in the kingdom hall. So these are supposed to be appointed men of God that are doing these things.
And
And
that's why whenever you said that they made you tell your story of losing your virginity in detail, that's why I feel like it was a little off because
for sure,
that's why I said, were they getting off on it? Because making you tell this, I mean, it's it seems like it's, kind of a yeah, it seems sick to me.
it is, it is definitely not normal. And I think even now there's still these cases that are happening and popping up and you can listen to any of them on YouTube or you can find the articles. They're really all over the place. It's
Do
just
you
not
think that the Jehovah Witness are going to have like how the Catholic Church has had such, such a you there's been so much PR and stuff around all the bad things that have happened from sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Do you think something like that's gonna come out about the Jehovah Witnesses as well eventually?
I think so. There's been quite a few documentaries, but since it's such a small sect, I think they only have like 8 million followers.
Okay.
It's not going to be as big in publicity as like, Catholicism. But at the same time, I feel like it is starting to become more mainstream and people are starting to really see these things. And now it's like people can't hide anymore. Like social media is everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
you really are going to find these things out. And that's why I feel like a lot of them the Jehovah's Witnesses are losing a lot of their followers because the younger crowd, obviously, they have TikTok, they have Instagram, they have all these things where they have just a mainstream of information and that's gonna, like, pique their interest, and they're gonna get curious and learn probably earlier on.
And do you think kids now are or just people overall are moving away from religion compared to, whenever, I was growing up, there was no internet and stuff, and so you had TV and there was cable was hardly even around. I hate to age myself, but there wasn't all this information flowing and stuff. And now I feel like people can make their own choice more about religion and there's more information out there. And what is your thought? Do you think that people are moving away from religion as kids or as young adults?
So I think people are more of like, I think there is a place for it, like people that need community and maybe they don't have family support or they
Mm,
don't have that. Like I feel like there is a good space for people to have like a church community, right? I think it's just about, okay, what is the belief system? How is it serving you or not serving you?
yeah,
That type of thing. But I do feel like, more people are realizing that they can just have a connection themselves. They don't need a pastor or an elder or
mm,
somebody else to like be the person that gets them that connection that they have that already within themselves.
yeah. And where are you at with your family today?
So I'm estranged from my family because like we talked about, once you leave, you really get abandoned and rejected for the community. And so I don't actually have any contact with the family that is in the religion still.
And so do you think your mother is curious at all about what you're doing or what your life is like at all?
Yeah, for sure. I think my mother definitely is. She she does. We have every once in a while I get a text message, from her, like every maybe couple of years. But it's like, so there is a space where I think she misses the relationship. We did have used to have a very close relationship, and I miss her every day. But she knows that her religion says she can't be around me because I'm very outspoken, as you can tell, as what I've been talking on this podcast, right? That I don't, I am outspoken about it. I'm not going to keep this information inside. I feel like everybody should know this information so that they can make the choice themselves.
And so and what about your brother? Are you in contact with him?
Yes, we are in contact. Yeah, we still have a relationship because he's out as well. So
Yeah.
that's a good
Oh,
thing.
oh,
Yeah, we do have each other.
and are you still married to the same person that you were at 35 who was a Jehovah Witness? Are you still together?
No, actually, he passed in 2020 to
Oh,
addiction.
I'm sorry
Mhm.
about that. Okay. But
You're
it
good.
wasn't because of you. It wasn't so you it was because he passed, that's why you're not together, but it had nothing to do with the religious piece.
No, actually, we left the religion, and I realized that the relationship also was not something I should be in. I realized it was toxic. And so I ended up leaving the religion and the relationship at the same time. So I went through
Okay.
a divorce and a loss of my identity all in one fell swoop. So yeah, it was quite the year, let me tell you. But then, I really started my healing journey. And then in 2020, when he passed, that was, there was a lot of grief and there was a lot of, you know, seeing my kids grieve, because he was the father to them. So that was a really difficult process. But yeah, I think that's another component I'd like to speak on is that a lot of times when people leave their religion, these type of cult-like systems, they don't know who they are and they use substances to try to fill the void.
And did you use substances to try to fill the void at some point?
I feel like I used alcohol a little bit, like in that space, like to, not really feel the pain of the abandonment and all
Yeah.
those things. I never had a problem with it or anything. I knew where to keep it in place in my relationship to it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there is going to be a place to kind of always use something to distract yourself.
And what about your kids? When you left the religion, your kids obviously left the religion with you. Is that
They
correct?
did. That's
And
correct. Yeah.
do they realize, like, how lucky they are that you did this for them, that you actually left?
They do. My oldest didn't realize it at the time because he's a little bit older. So he was kind of, indoctrinated into it at 12 years old. He left at that age. So he didn't recognize it until later. And then he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we left. And he was very excited to engage in holidays and normal life and, have a freedom that they hadn't had before.
Do you do birthdays now and have Christmas trees and do all
All the,
that?
t- all the
Okay.
time. Yeah. Yeah. Now it's like, I still have the connection that people usually do that have done that all their life, but I still enjoy the connection to celebration and having fun with the holidays.
That's awesome. I'm glad. I mean, it sounds like you've really made some good strides in your life, and now you have the life that you deserved or wanted, right? It sounds like
Absolutely.
you
For sure. And it's interesting. It's like you kind of lose the community, but I feel like you always kind of find your way back to community. Like you find the friendships or the people that feel like family. I've been, you know, very blessed to be able to find those type of things in my life. So I've never gone without.
that's awesome. So you have a book coming out. Tell me about your book and how people can find out about it.
For sure. So my book is Shattered, Broken, and Beautiful. And this is really, this is my own memoir to really speak to losing my religion, but really finding faith. And to speak to, everybody that's been in an abusive relationship or had a really traumatic childhood to why you kind of get stuck in the patterns that you do, right? Why we kind of get trapped in these abusive relationships or why we don't realize what the things that we're doing are like actually harming us. As if there is some trauma there, we're going to be existing from these old patterns that are no longer serving. And so I want to help people identify those and then heal those so that they can really thrive in life and embrace who they really were meant to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's and what just because of what you went through, you just wanted to kind of give back and write this book and like help guide people. Is that kind of
Yes, I
the
think that is a big piece of it. I also, I really speak to the experience of being in this type of cult and how it really affected my life. But I really want to use it as a space for those that have felt like the outsider, the people that have been in cults or people who have been in these type of relationships. And, I want to help them to find their purpose, their meaning, and show them the way back to more meaningful life and healing. Because often we kind of get stuck. So that's why a lot of people are like, I don't know why I keep finding these same relationships, right? It's because it's a pattern, it's what you're doing, and you're picking and choosing the same type of person because it's familiar. So I want to teach people that's kind of one of the biggest reasons. And how do you get out of the familiar and break those patterns so that they can really find their authentic self.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah, so
great.
thank you.
And what's your website so people can learn more about you?
Sure. Lifecoachinggoddess.com. So they can learn through there.
Lifecoachinggoddess.com.
Yeah, my book will have a page there as well if they're interested in learning more or grabbing a copy.
And do you do life coaching for people online or do they have to be in your local community? Can you do it with anyone?
We can do it. I can do it with anyone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was so nice to have you on, Brooke. Thank you so much for telling your story. And, I think that it's going to resonate with many people because I think a lot of people have grown up with a religion, maybe not as strict as what you have, but in some people's cases, it could even be even more strict and crazy. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. So thanks for being on my show.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me here.
Okay. Thanks everybody for listening and be sure to subscribe to my podcast and follow me on the Real Zach RE on Instagram. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Brooke.